Hi nerds, and welcome to my review for Jamke. So we're going to be trying out this new format for reviews. I hope you guys don't mind. I would love to hear your opinions, your input, and what I can do to make this better. But for now, let's focus on the unit coming out on the 9th. Jamke hails from genealogy of the Holy War, and he comes to this game as an infantry-based, colorless archer. Alright, so a few of you may remember this. This was the stat page I made for him a little while ago when he came out, and yes, that is everything you're going to be getting when Jamke is released on the 4th. And, well, there are a few oddities here that I do want to address. So, at 5 stars, you're going to be able to get Slaying Bow Plus, which is, hey, pretty nice, and Heavy Blade 3, which is an oddity, but we'll have to discuss that a little bit later. 4-star is Astra and Cancel Affinity. So, if you are interested in any of these abilities to pass on to another character, feel free to do so. It's really up to you. But skills aren't the only thing that are really valuable here. We also need to look at stats, friends. And, well, there's 2 things I want to talk about. One, his attack stat is 36, which is pretty high considering he's an archer. He also has 32 speed, which is not exactly amazing, but it's not terrible either, so it's middle ground. From there, 29 defense is, well, it can help him survive. His res won't be doing him any favors. Don't let him, get attacked by any really powerful mages. But his health is a decent amount at 38. So all in all, I would say he's a decent enough unit. He can tackle enough, he has some rare abilities, and, well, we're going to have to discuss this a little bit more at length in our pros and cons section, which is what we're doing right now.
Guide my bow.
Alright, so I'm just going to do it as plain as I possibly can. Let's go into pros and what he can bring to you as a teammate and a unit. So first up, let's just say that his attack range is actually pretty decent. 36 and 32 attack and speed reliably can do a lot. He also has some rarer abilities and a weapon that can be very nice on other characters in case you decide to fodder him. He also has solid defense and could be a very reliable free-to-play infantry archer. But we do have some problems here. Namely, his stats are quite comparable to other archers, especially infantry archers. Let me give you an example. Right now in the game, when you start the game, you get Takumi. He's a reliable archer, he has speed and attack, and he has stats around the same level as Jamke when it really matters. You also have other characters like Leon, who can be very much comparable to him. Virion can also be somewhat reliable as well. It's just the problem of what we have going on. They also have access to things like IVs, so technically they can get an attack boost or a speed boost, while Jamke cannot. He will be stuck as he is forever with these stats. That's just how that is. Unfortunate, but it seems like a lot of our infantry archers are kind of a mixed bag. They're always in this same sort of location when it comes to stats. They're either a little bit less on attack, or sometimes they have some more defenses. Occasionally we may even get a res one. But this is the exact same thing that we've been getting for a while with infantry archers, and it's just kind of unfortunate that Jamke doesn't really break any real mold there, and it's really dependent on player preference at this point. The next thing I will say are that his passives are very, very odd and extremely niche when it comes to certain situations. Cancel Affinity is a very interesting option, but it's not something you're probably going to be using all that often. It's mostly there to combat Triangle Adept and Raven Tomes, which Colorless will run into occasionally in story mode and some challenge maps, but when it comes to things like Arena or anything like that, you probably won't be seeing very much of that at all. And the B slot is highly, highly coveted and has a lot of great skills, so it's really hard to fit that option in there when it really comes down to bottom line. And then of course we have Heavy Blade, which I'm just going to say is a unique ability. It's really fun to see and a really valid option on some units in seal form. However, as an A slot, it can be very, very intrusive. It can be very mediocre. It's not very helpful because the A slot, as it is very much highly coveted. It has a lot of great stat boosting options, has a lot of great options just for reducing cooldowns and everything under the sun that you can possibly think of. It's where distant and close counter come into play, and all of these other intricate moments that the A slot really needs, and Heavy Blade does not really provide that. In Seal form, it's really great. As an A slot passive, it will not find too much of a home on a lot of units, mostly because they need those stat boosting properties to be able to hit it well enough. Jamke manages to hit a 49 attack innately with Slaying Bow, which is actually really good for an archer, but if you want to have a better chance of using Heavy Blade, chances are you're going to want to change out that A slot. And even as fodder ability, it's going to be a very odd choice when instead you could just use the Seal and use the A slot for something a bit more beneficial. I hope you can get what I'm trying to lay down here. Hopefully. But let's stop focusing on the negatives and instead turn our attention to what you can do for builds. Now, there are a lot of options out there for Jamke, and he reminds me a lot of what I do when it comes to Leon. And, well, you may realize that some of these mock-ups that I've made are very similar to a lot of what you may run into when it comes to Leon. In fact, one of these builds is exactly stolen from my Leon, so yeah. The first options I could go for are quite expensive. Those are things like upgrading your Slaying Bow so he has more defense because he naturally can hit 32 defense with that, give him something like Close Counter, Quick Riposte, maybe Close Defense. You could also change that out and make like Quick Riposte your Seal and Guard your B slot, and these are all very much options of what you may be familiar with if you use New Year's Corrin, maybe you use, Leon. These are effective melee tanks who can fire back and should be able to trigger their specials reliably well, and Jamke can do that just as well too. So honestly, that's one of my more favorite builds, is the idea of Close Counter, but it's not exactly very, easy to obtain these. You might need to kill off a Takumi or something. No one wants to do that, right? You can also, of course, go pure attack. I would say if you're going for a cheaper build, go with something like Slaying Bow, refine that into speed so he has a little bit more speed, give him something like a Speed Seal. Life and Death, Fury, those are both valuable options if you want to use an A slot effectively. Desperation, if you can get his speed up even further, and the C skill is really dependent on what you do. Since he seems to have a lot of attack, I went with Hone Attack, at least for this kind of short option. And there are a lot of other things you could do. You could do Threaten Defense, or Threaten Speed, and all these other options for a cheaper, more effective build without having to go too far into 5-star category. You could also potentially make him a Brave Bow unit, because that is, I guess, what everyone does whenever there's an archer around, and that could work out fairly well, giving him certain skills that will enhance his attack and his speed, just as I've spoken about before. And you could do things like Swordbreaker for a cheap option, because a lot of sword units are in this game, and destroying them is always fun. With all of these options that you do have, I really say that if you build him correctly, he will be a reliable source of damage, and a generally good archer for free, so these options are all available to you when it comes to builds. However, it's really up to you if you're going to keep him or not. I can't say for sure. So let's wrap this up. Let's go over, the final review, what I think of Jamke as a unit, and how well he'll do in the game. Well, he's not the worst free-to-play unit that we could get. He's middle of the road. I would say as a character focus, he's about a 3 out of 5, meaning that he's around where a lot of the other archers are, which is somewhat fitting considering that he is one. And, I would say as a fodder character, I would probably put him at a 2 out of 5, mostly because, his skills are quite niche, at least outside of Slaying Bow. And they're going to struggle to try and find a home for themselves on other units. You can potentially do it, I'm sure, but when it comes to these skills, it's just not something I see as end-all be-all need to fodder. It's just, I would say, Jamke as a unit would probably be better suited as being used rather than foddered off. That's just what I think. As a character, he will be useful for you. He will be a great free-to-play archer, one that you can get without having to worry about spending any orbs. But once you get a better archer, you may want to switch it up. You may want to use someone different. But he still will be there for you, and he'll be reliable till the very end. So how about you guide his bow and help him out a bit? And for now, it's time to say adios. Thank you guys so much for watching, taking a look, and wondering about Jamke just as much as me. If you enjoyed this review, feel free to leave a like. Thanks again for watching, and I will catch you on the next review.